Imagine a desolate battlefield, frozen bodies strewn across a field, stripped bare and battered beyond recognition. This is the haunting aftermath of the Washita Massacre, a brutal episode of the American frontier that reveals more than just bloodshed. It exposes tensions among the leaders of the 7th Cavalry. In a letter written by Captain Frederick Benteen, a trusted officer under George A. Custer, we find raw criticism, shocking details, and a perspective that would foreshadow the infamous clash at Little Bighorn years later. Journey with us as we uncover Benteen's dark truths of the Washita Massacre and his complicated relationship with Custer, a commander he both served with and ultimately despised. Fort Cobb, IT, December 22, 1868. My dear friend, I wrote to you from Camp Supply, which place was left on the 7th, arriving at this post on the evening of the 18th. On the 11th, we camped within a few miles of our Battle of the Washita, and Gens Sheridan and Custer, with a detail of 100 men, mounted as escort, went out with the view of searching for the bodies of our 19 missing comrades, including Madge Elliott. The bodies were found in a small circle, stripped as naked as when born, and frozen stiff. Their heads had been battered in, and some of them had been entirely chopped off. Some of them had had the Adam's apple cut out of their throats. Some had their hands and feet cut off, and nearly all had been horribly mangled in a way delicacy forbids me to mention. They lay scarcely 2 miles from the scene of the fight, and all we know of the manner they were killed we have learned from Indian sources. It seems that Madge Elliott's party were pursuing a well-mounted party of Cheyennes in the direction of the Grand Village, where nearly all the tribes were encamped and were surrounded by the reinforcements coming to the rescue of the pursued before the major was aware of their position. They were out of sight and hearing of the 7th Cavalry, which had remained at and around the captured village, about 2 miles away. As soon as Madge Elliott found that he was surrounded, he caused his men to dismount and did some execution among the Indians, which added to the mortification they must have felt at the loss of the village and herds of their friends and allies, and enraged them so that they determined upon the destruction of the entire little band. Who can describe the feeling of that brave band as with anxious beating hearts they strained their yearning eyes in the direction whence help should come? What must have been the despair that, when all hopes of succor died out, nerved their stout arms to do and die? Round and round rush the red fiends, smaller and smaller shrinks the circle, but the aim of that devoted, gallant knot of heroes is steadier than ever, and the death howl of the murderous redskin is more frequent. But on they come in masses grim, with glittering lance and one long, loud, exulting whoop, as if the gates of hell had opened and loosed the whole infernal host. A well-directed volley from their trusty carbines makes some of the miscreants reel and fall, but their death rattles are drowned in the greater din. Soon every voice in that little band is still as death. But the hellish work of the savages is scarce begun, and their ingenuities are taxed to invent barbarities to practice on the bodies of the fallen brave, the relation of which is scarcely necessary to the completion of this tale. And now, to learn why the anxiously looked-for succor did not come, let us view the scene in the captured village, scarce 2 short miles away. Light skirmishing is going on all around. Savages on flying steeds, with shields and feathers gay, are circling everywhere, riding like devils incarnate. The troops are on all sides of the village, looking on and seizing every opportunity of picking off some of those daring riders with their carbines. But does no one think of the welfare of Madge Elliott and party? It seems not. But yes, a squadron of cavalry is in motion. They trot, they gallop, now they charge. The cowardly redskins flee the coming shock and scatter here and there among the hills, scurry away. But it is the true line. Will the cavalry keep it? No, no, they turn. Ah, 'tis only to intercept the wily foe. See, a gray troop goes on in the direction again. One more short mile, and they will be saved. Oh, for a mother's prayers! Will not some good angel prompt them? They charge the mound, a few scattering shots, and the murderous pirates of the plains go unhurt away. There is no hope for that brave little band. The death doom is theirs, for the cavalry halt and rest their panting steeds. And now return with me to the village. Officers and soldiers are watching, resting, eating, and sleeping. In an hour or so, they will be refreshed, and then scour the hills and plains for their missing comrades. The commander occupies himself in taking an inventory of the captured property, which he had promised the officers shall be distributed among the enlisted men of the command if they falter or halt not in the charge. The day is drawing to a close, and but little has been done save the work of the first hour. A great deal remains to be done. That which cannot be taken away must be destroyed. 800 ponies are to be put to death. Our chief exhibits his close sharpshooting and terrifies the crowd of frighted, captured squaws and papooses by dropping the straggling ponies in death near them. Ah, he is a clever marksman. Not even do the poor dogs of the Indians escape his eye and aim as they drop dead or limp howling away. But are not those our men on guard on the other side of the creek? Will he not hit them? "My troop is on guard, General, just over there," says an officer. "Well, bullets will not go through or around hills, and you see there is a hill between us," was the reply, and the exhibition goes on. No one will come that way intentionally, certainly not. Now commences the slaughter of the ponies. Volley on volley is poured into them by two hasty men, and they, limping, get away only to meet death from a surer hand. The work progresses. The plunder, having been culled over, is hastily piled. The wigwams are pulled down and thrown on it, and soon the whole is one blazing mass. Occasionally a startling report is heard, and a steam-like volume of smoke ascends as the fire reaches a powder bag, and thus the glorious deeds of valor done in the morning are celebrated by the flaming bonfire of the afternoon. The last pony is killed. The huge fire dies out. Our wounded and dead comrades, heroes of a bloody day, are carefully laid on ready ambulances, and as the brave hand of the 7th Cavalry strikes up the air, "Ain't I glad to get out of the wilderness?" we slowly pick our way across the creek over which we charged so gallantly in the early morn. Take care. Do not trample on the dead bodies of that woman and child lying there. In a short time, we shall be far from the scene of our daring dash, and night will have thrown her dark mantle over the scene. But surely some search will be made for our missing comrades. No, they are forgotten. Over them and the poor ponies, the wolves will hold high carnival, and their howlings will be their only requiem. Slowly trudging, we return to our train, some 20 miles away, and with bold, exulting hearts, learn from one another how many dead Indians have been seen. 2 weeks elapse. A larger force returns that way. A search is made, and the bodies are found strewn round that little circle, frozen stiff and hard. Who shall write their eulogy? This, my dear friend, is the story of the Battle of the Washita, poorly told. The letter from the Washita battlefield not only serves as a somber remembrance of fallen soldiers, but also reveals the complexities of conflict, loyalty, and strained relationships among American military officers. Years after the Washita battle, the famous 1876 encounter at Little Bighorn further exposed these tensions, particularly between Captain Frederick Benteen and Colonel George A. Custer. In this dramatic confrontation, Custer divided his troops to attack the Sioux village and sent his last order through John Martin, calling on Benteen, his most reliable battlefield commander, to "Come on, big village, be quick." However, as Benteen responded to this order, he came across Major Marcus Reno's forces struggling desperately on the east side of the river. Half of Reno's men were already dead or missing, and Reno, witnessing the massacre of his soldiers, pleaded with Benteen to halt his command and assist in reorganizing his troops. With characteristic calm under fire, Benteen chose to halt, thus providing Reno the support Custer had promised but failed to deliver. Benteen's timely decision to reinforce Reno, later supported by McDougall's pack train, proved decisive. As Sioux forces advanced, the added support saved the surviving soldiers from certain death. Many witnesses, like William O. Taylor and Dr. H.R. Porter, noted Benteen's composure and valor, commending him for effectively taking command and safeguarding lives. For Benteen, this episode reaffirmed both his commitment to his fellow soldiers and his growing contempt for Custer. Benteen's animosity toward Custer was no secret. He once openly condemned Custer for abandoning his men during the Washita Massacre, and he later confessed, "I'm only too proud to say that I despised him." Yet, in his letter to his wife on July 4, 1876, Benteen's grief softened the sharp edges of his resentment. In a poignant margin note, he mourned the deaths of Custer's family members and comrades, writing with a sense of sorrow. Boston Custer and young Mr. Reed, a nephew of Genel Custer, were killed, also Kellogg, the reporter. Benteen's story illuminates the complex loyalties and moral convictions that defined his role. Despite his bitterness toward Custer, Benteen's dedication to his fellow soldiers in the heat of battle reveals a legacy of bravery, humanity, and integrity under the harshest conditions, a tribute as powerful as the story of the Washita itself.